because of the time limitations, I can't spend more than 10 minutes, they say, per application. So I'm the current graduate chair for my department, so I have a lot of experience in looking at PhD applications as well as master's applications. For PhD applications, oftentimes we'll look at research experience of a student. We want to identify that the student has a true intent to pursue a PhD, and oftentimes it can come through the statements, but also the experience that the students have during their undergraduate degree. One thing that I particularly look for is whether the student can craft out a narrative of the story of how they got into research and what kind of things they like to pursue in the future. We like to be able to see the student has a true intent to pursue a PhD, and rather than seeing this as a next educational step. Right, so the career goals has to align with the intent to pursue a PhD. So that's very, very important. Particularly for myself, I look very carefully at the reference letters, especially if the students has worked in the lab. Sort of the letter itself speaks a lot about the candidate.
So how many minutes roughly do you spend on reviewing each application?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a lot of applications as the graduate chair. I don't have a lot of time to spend on each application, so I typically screen through the CV, right, just to get a sense of the student's academic record. And then I look at the letters. I look at the letters carefully. I do look at the statements. Again, because of the time limitations, I can't spend more than 10 minutes, they say, per application. But oftentimes I do take a very quick look at the whole thing. And I have to emphasize, many schools, including ours, evaluate applications at a holistic level. So we don't, they say, just look at the GPA, set a cutoff, and accept students with a high GPA. We actually do look at many, many factors in selecting our PhD students. So I think one of the key requirements, or I think key features for masters who want to pursue PhD, is whether they have these intellectual independence, right? Whether they can pursue knowledge on their own instead of learning knowledge through reading textbook. Other things I look for in a PhD or in a PhD candidate that I think master's students need to convince themselves that they have is this perseverance, right? Whether they can tackle a problem persistently. In doing science and engineering, oftentimes you don't know the solution, so you have to explore many different things. And when you do that, you're prone to failure. And I think master's students who may not have the resilience or perseverance may find themselves suffer through that process. Another thing I like to highlight is for master's students, you think about whether you have creativity or originality. Again, PhD is a open-ended problem-solving game, right? So if you don't have the creativity or the originality, it may actually be very challenging to do a PhD. And then I guess along that line, being able to manage your time is also very important. When you're PhD students, you have to be able to juggle many things, multiple projects. Time management becomes super important. Again, as a master's student, you may not be tasked with doing many things at the same time. You just have to focus on coursework. So I would say those few things are pretty important when it comes to master's student thinking about whether they are suitable for a PhD or not. When we are recruiting students from abroad, oftentimes that's one of the things that we looked at is when the student go through a master's program, whether they have any publication record, whether it's attending conferences or a peer review publication. That becomes something that many admissions committee look for, is whether you have that during your master's degree, right? Because that sets you up for success in PhD.